Hi guys, welcome to your English lesson. We are doing another quick recap and this time it is of relative clauses. So, first of all we need to remind ourselves about pronouns. So we can use a pronoun in the place of a noun. For example, Isa watched the sun warmed Isa smiled. So lots of nouns in there. So to help us avoid repeating the same noun, we can replace them with pronouns. So Isa watched the sun, it warmed him, he smiled. Relative pronouns are used slightly differently to other pronouns. They introduce a relative clause and therefore they relate the clause to the noun or the pronoun. So here we've got the camel, which was covered in sand, refused to move. Which is our relative pronoun and it tells the reader that the relative clause relates to the camel. Okay, the same with this. It bared its teeth, which were yellow and crooked. Which is the relative pronoun and it's telling the reader that the relative clause is relating to its teeth. So, relative clauses usually begin with relative pronoun. They give us more information about a noun or pronoun. So here we've got the child wailed. We want to know more information about the child. So here are some examples of how we could use relative clauses. The child, who was wrapped in finest, softest cotton, wailed. The child, who had huge black pearls for eyes, wailed. The child, who had been hidden inside the woven basket, wailed. We've got the same thing here. We've got Mariama knew the desert. We want to know more about the desert. And here are some examples of how you could do that using relative clauses. So Mariama knew the desert, which was vast and beautiful. Mariama knew the desert, where many travellers needed guiding. Mariama knew the desert, that became her home. So, what I'd like to do, pause the video, see if you can spot the relative clauses. Okay, so, hopefully you were right. We've got who needed a guide, who loved the desert, which was carrying Mariama, that was the shape of half a star, and where she was found. Okay, again, this time I'd like to pause the video and have a go at adding a relative clause to these sentences. The pronouns are already there for you, so pause it and have a go. When the relative clause comes after the main clause, we don't need to use commas, okay, because they would create an unnecessary break. So in most of the examples we've seen so far, that we've had the main clause and then the relative clause. However, sometimes the relative clause is embedded in the main clause. Okay, so we want to know more about Isa. The relative clause needs to be next to Isa. Okay, Isa cared for Mariama as his own. We need the relative clause to go here. So the main clause splits to make space. So so it's still all our main clause, it's just that we've split it. Okay, and we use commas to separate the clauses because the relative clause has broken up the main clause. Okay, so the sentence is now, Isa, who was the best guide in the land, cared for Mariama as his own. Okay, so have a go at doing this. Pause the video. Where are the relative clauses which need to be punctuated with commas? So hopefully you've paused and had a go. So here is our relative clause, doesn't need a comma. Here is our relative clause, okay, this does need a comma because it's in the middle of the main clause. Here is our relative clause, again it needs commas because it's splitting the main clause. Okay, here is our main clause, relative clause is at the end, we don't need any commas. Here we go, again in the middle, so we need to have those commas. Okay, so relative clauses can also relate to a whole sentence or clause. Isa's sight was failing is a sentence, it's our main clause. The relative clause we've added is which worried Mariama. Now that's actually relating to the whole clause. It's not the sight which worried Mariama, it's the failing of the sight. Okay, so sometimes our relative clauses can relate to the whole sentence. There's some activities to do on the website now. There's red, blue and yellow. If you're not sure, have a go at the red. And remember, you can watch this as many times as you need or want. Speak to you later.